Welcome to another episode of the Supernova Lab District 6 Technologies Inc. Mastery Series, where we have conversations with industry game changers in the Caribbean and in the diaspora. I am Jonathan Sylvester, co-founder of District 6 Technologies, along with my business partner, Javon Robinson. We will lead you through a series of discussions and give you insights to critical topics impacting Barbados and the wider Caribbean. In line with Supernova Labs Arc Academy's mission, this six-part series is designed to equip innovators, researchers, and emerging founders with access to insights from our region's best minds to build mission-driven experiments. Today, my esteemed colleague Javon will be discussing the next 10 years. What does success look like for Caribbean women in tech with Alison Brown Ellis? Alison is a dynamic and experienced corporate executive with 25 years of expertise and a proven track record of driving transformation with unwavering excellence. In her current capacity as CEO, she leads a dynamic team and sets strategy for Cave Shepherd Card Barbados Inc. As a visionary leader, Alison has successfully led her company to acquire the status of the first non-financial institution in the English-speaking Latin American Caribbean region to obtain a principal membership license with Visa International, while spearheading the launch of one of Barbados's first digital payment wallets. She has also spearheaded the first financial partnership with IDB Invest in Barbados to a non-bank under Barbados law and in Barbados currency. If you are a woman in tech, entrepreneur, ecosystem builder, or a business development stakeholder, this is the critical episode to tune into. That being said, spread the word, like and subscribe to the series, and join our community. Over to you, Javon.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And Alison, welcome to the Master Series. I have to contain my excitement. I'm so excited to be speaking to you, to have you on the program today. So, I got to temper it. I got to bring it down, bring it down.
Well, I am very excited to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion and even to hearing some of what your perspective is as we go through the conversation.
Exactly. And I love how you say it, we're here to have a conversation, we're not doing an interview, we're three people, we're professionals, we're talking about Caribbean development, the advancement of our people or region. So we want to talk about that.
Yes.
And, it's in that same vein, Alison, let's kick off. Tell us about your journey. Jono gave an absolutely lofty introduction and people are like, wow, you know.
Where do I start, Japan? Where do I start?
Mhm.
I'm actually coming up on my 28th year in terms of my career progression. And I would say to you that of that 28 years, about 25 of those have been in the payments industry. So I kind of consider myself somewhat of an expert, someone that knows the
Kinda.
business.
More than
um,
kinda.
not every facet of the payments industry and at different iterations and levels, but sufficient to really run a very successful business. So I do believe that there's quite a bit to share. Generally, just in terms of career progression, I've spent 13 years in banking. Still don't
Yeah.
consider myself to be a banker, never did. I've always been on the customer experience side of things, customer design, product design, customer experience. That has always been my wheelhouse, and I absolutely love strategy. So for the last 15 years this year, I've been had the opportunity to lead the Cape Shepherd Card business and really brought some amazing transformations to the business. Really proud of the work my team is doing, and really happy to be able to contribute to shareholder value.
Absolutely wonderful. John has said it best. Fantastic indeed. And, we talk about tech and not just in the Caribbean, but, even here in Metropolis, between the three of us, we've lived in various parts around the world. And sometimes tech seems to always be dominated by male figures, so to speak. In a Caribbean context, particularly, and as a woman in tech running a successful digital payment system, how has that journey been? And if you could talk to us about some of the challenges and even some of the pros, actually, as a woman in tech in the region.
Yeah, I would definitely say it has been a challenge, but it has been one that, with the right level of courage, you can overcome, right? One of the things I always say to persons that I mentor within this space is that you have to be position yourself to stay ahead of the game. You have to understand what's coming next, right? And if you position yourself and as part of your own evolution, you're getting into rooms and getting into forums where you have that broad knowledge base. You don't have to be an expert in every area, but to lead, you have to have a level of exposure, right? And that
Yes.
exposure then helps you to kind of determine which paths you're going to deepen. And I think that my ability to stay broad and then get into the specifics when necessary has really helped with our evolution and the level of digital transformation that we've brought to the business. So, for example, I'm very intentional about whether it is visa conferences, whether it is, looking and researching AI. I mean, AI is obviously, we're in that era now.
Yeah, we are. We
So
are.
really, really to understand so that I can get in front of these things. You can't lead your team down a path that you yourself don't first understand, right? So it's
Yes.
important that for me, that knowledge is power, and for women in this space is for them to understand that if they do that and they're consistent, that they can actually get into rooms and have a voice. When you are speaking as the only person that has spent the time to do the research, you come with some level of value from the beginning, right?
Yes.
You are showing that you can add value to the conversation, even
Yeah.
if it just means you go off and do some more research after. But it's really having a voice, but having a voice first starts with having that level of exposure and being very intentional in your learning.
It is so critical what you stated there because, fields such as the technology field, it's fast evolving. And as you correctly stated, in the age of AI, everything is moving like at rapid pace. Today it's relevant, tomorrow it's no longer relevant. Something more important came,
Precisely.
you know?
Precisely. The
So,
pace
and
of change.
yeah, it's crazy, and the thing is, we live in a Caribbean context. We're Caribbean people, either for or against. We're laid back, we're chill, like we'll get to it at some point. But the world is moving along and left us behind,
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely. Yes.
and
No.
it's
I
it's one of
know.
it. Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, I'm sure it's one of the challenges that you face within the region, especially when you're trying to bring advanced technology to your institution.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch on some of the challenges that I've experienced, or, in terms of leading the team, is recognizing that, especially as a small, we would be considered small in the global context, right? So when you are then looking to the global arena for solutions, you have to be able to understand one, where you don't get lost depending on the vendor you select, right? You're not so small to them that you're insignificant, or where you are
Yeah.
then not buying more capacity than you need and adding additional cost to your bottom line. So you have to strike that balance in one, the vendor, someone that you could have a relationship and not a transaction, and then the
Yeah.
ability to kind of really just focus on where you are now in terms of enhancement and the continuous improvement in your service offering, but something that allows for a little bit of disruption. So it's finding the right balance there.
Yeah, I would say financial services, and within that range, fintech, digital payments, it's well, I would say new, and you could correct me if you think I'm wrong. A new economy, if you want to call it that, in the Caribbean, in places like Africa, for instance, in terms of the developing world, global South context, it is prevalent. We had a conversation last week with someone who was on the podcast, and we spoke about the development in Kenya, and Jonah will tell you as we move along about his experiences with digital payments in Kenya. So from a Caribbean perspective and looking at fintech and digital payments, what are ways, besides what you do specifically, for this to become what I would call a vehicle for empowerment, particularly of Caribbean women within technology?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that we have to see digital payments and the evolution as an opportunity, right? Especially for women, whether women led businesses or women who are leading households. And the reason why I say that is that digital payments brings you convenience, it brings you the opportunities to be able to, get your hands involved in many other things. It really gives you an opportunity to kind of sit back and assess where can I better use my time? It brings productivity. And I think that that's something that we overlook. But the ability to stay right here now and send money over to my daughter in Grenada, these are things that I don't have to go to the bank. I don't have to contact an account rep. These are things that we have to build into our ecosystem because it allows for productivity. And we know that more productive people make better economies. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah. And
that's
this,
one of the things that we have to remember.
and this is the key point now, and I want to bring in Jono here, particularly on this whole idea of digital payments, because every time he tells his story about his experience in Kenya, it makes me smile. So I think this is a key area which Jono was sure would like to come
Yeah,
in
I
and make a
mean,
comment. Yeah.
I'm sure I've told Alison this story already. While in a market in Kenya, in Nairobi, it was my last day of a conference, and I'm trying to get rid of all the last bits of my cash, and the vendors wouldn't take my cash. They all
Yep.
wanted me to transact with them in M-Pesa, and I think the key thing was the leap in technology that they took maybe about 5, 10 years ago when they made the decision to partner with the telco to
Yes.
align all the financial institutions around this platform to make it easier for people in the village to get paid for their goods and services in the city. And then it just spread throughout. And I think we had the discussion about culture in the Kenya context. And so I guess the question for you, Alison, is we have the partner culture. I think we call it partner. I don't know what you call it, where your grandmother and your auntie, and I think our prime minister spoke about this on another podcast, where they would put their money together, and one person of that group would get that money each month
Right.
to
Yeah.
pay for
Yeah.
things. I don't know what do
Yeah.
you call it
Okay.
here in Barbados?
We call it a meeting turn.
A meet
So
and
Meeting
turn.
turn. In
yeah.
Montserrat, we call it Baksan.
A
A
box,
And
a
Baksan.
some
box and
A
Yeah,
Baksan,
and
yeah.
some people call
so
it a susu as well.
a susu.
Other countries in the
Right, right. So
ACS
in
call it a
Jamaica,
susu.
we call it a partner,
Yeah.
partner, right? So it's your
Okay,
partners
okay,
put together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that culture is there in terms of saving. It's a way of saving, right? Group community saving, and I think the idea of the credit unions, came into play as part of that.
right.
But
Yes, you're correct.
what's yeah? So, but my question to you is, what leap in the Caribbean do we have to take to get from that kind of system, the credit union type system, to what the next thing is?
Yeah, so I would say, well, first of all, I had the opportunity to go to Kenya in Nairobi as well. So I
There you
Okay.
go.
spent 2 days with the M-Pesa team, just trying to learn the business, right? And
Right.
Safaricom, they were very happy to host us, and just understanding how advanced they were. That was the first mind blowing thing for me, right? And one of the things I would say to you is that one of the bigger takeaways, and it took us a while to get here, but I'm encouraged because Barbados is moving in that direction, was that a lot of what they were doing was being governed by a national strategy. Right? Their mandate from the central bank was that this is something for our people. And I
Yeah.
think to answer your question about how we leap how we leap forward is really to understand that, as if you're talking technology, we have to make sure that the technology is serving its people, and it's rooted in purpose. And if we're building based on our little silos and not looking at the national kind of trajectory of where we want to take our country, I don't think we'll get it right. So that's the first thing. I think that now that, and I'll speak for Barbados, now that we're talking about the National Payment System Act, like legislation, and which has been the leap pad for BIM Pay, I now believe that I don't know the technology, but I do know that it is a move in the right direction. We have to have something that kind of normalizes everyone and creates a level playing field, because women-led businesses or women in technology, I think that there's a need for us to have something that is rooted in purpose for us to all be working towards. And I think that when we reach that stage of recognition, I think we're going to do a lot better in the products and the solutions that we're putting out.
And how has it been, Alison, in terms of, we know we talk about Barbados and what's been done there, the wonderful work to really improve tech and tech services, and having the legislation behind it is critical from a policy standpoint.
Yes.
You are a CEO. It's not just the Barbados business, the company, parent company is international, your business is regional. How has it been, that cross border, trans Caribbean interaction for what you're hoping to achieve, let's say, in Grenada, in nearby St. Lucia, Dominica, etc., etc.? How has that been
Yeah.
by way of challenge?
I would say that we're not there as a group yet. We're not there as a within our own kind of structure and solutions. One of the biggest challenges within the Barbados context is looking at the opportunity. One, remittance of funds is one thing that across borders we have not figured that out yet, right? I have to do too much to get
Oh,
my
wow.
bank to approve for me to send money to my daughter at school, right? Just
I
too
don't I
much.
know it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But then there's also looking at, where do we go as an entity being the Caribbean to pool our resources so that we're building to connect. We're not creating systems that allow for interoperability, not at a local level. We're now getting there, and definitely not at a regional level.
I hear that. I
That's
hear
a
that.
great point. That's a great point. And our government did, a fantastic job at the time. I mean, people have their different views about the vaccine, but the governments led by the Barbados government was able to secure an allotment of vaccines, and then it was shared with other
Yes.
countries in the region, which was a fantastic move. So there was a
Yes.
mechanism that was put in place to allow for that.
Hmm.
And I guess my question there is, okay, well, if we can do that in an emergency situation, why can't we just take that model, standardize it,
Yeah,
and figure out
Absolutely.
how we can apply that kind of model to how
generally.
we take tech from these global entities? How do we look at AI, for instance? Do we look at if we look at it from a Barbados standpoint, we're not going to win. But if we look
Yes.
at it from a Caribbean, what is the Caribbean's response to AI
Yes.
to the rest of the world? What
Yes.
is our intellectual property? Yeah. And how do we protect that? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Things like that. I mean, what do you think?
I think that's such a critical point, though, Jonathan, because even for me, looking, and I was in the heart of COVID because we fought to be recognized as financial services
Yeah.
because
Right.
we're
Wow.
not
Yes, of
bank.
course.
And then once we got the approval, it meant being in it every day, right? And
Yeah.
finding the solutions for our customers to be able to still transact. And there are so many benefits, in my view, of a lot of the things that we then were able to pull together our resources. I remember being on calls with other entities that were operating and sharing the best practices, sharing the successes, sharing the wins, and then it was almost as though the pandemic was gone, and
Yeah.
so were all the best practices. So were all the
Right.
things that led us to
Yeah.
function a lot more efficient. So it's something that I think there's a lot of benefit. And I will say this to you from the outside looking in sometimes in terms of how our own government is using technology, even within if different bodies of government, you can tell they're not leveraging the synergies, right?
Yeah.
And that is a very unfortunate thing because one, it's wastage of not just resources. It's also a stretch on talent, and it also doesn't lend to a bigger picture, right? Like that kind of focus of a national strategy kind of helps you to then be thinking, okay, well, this department did it successfully, so we should do it too. And that's one of the things within the Cape Shepherd group that we try to embody. We try to make sure that we're either, even if we're not having the same resources on a project, that we are literally saying, well, we've just done this, and Pace Digital we happen to be the disruptor in the group. So we're ahead in terms of our digital strategy, and we say, well, hey, check, this is the vendor, this is what we've done, and this is how you should should approach it. So they're not starting from ground zero, and
Right.
they have something that's already implemented so that they can assess for themselves. So I think we really do need to do a better job, either at country level or company level.
I love how you wear the disruptor badge
With
for
honor.
with honor and pride. I love that so much. I think it's fantastic and it's
Can
amazing.
I just tell you this though? Because when you asked me to do the podcast, I said, "Well, I'm not in technology," and then it hit me like all the major projects I've just done for this group have been technology-led projects.
Yes,
So
they
I
are.
had a aha moment, right? And then it hit me that technology is not a man thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Technology is
yeah.
a human thing.
Yes,
So
it is.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
absolutely. Go ahead, Jovan.
But you said something a few moments ago, which I just want to expand on a little bit more because I found it quite interesting. You said that you fought to be recognized as a financial services, and I found that quite intriguing. Do you mind, you know what, let me ask you, do you mind elaborating a little more what the fight? You
Sure,
know, not too
sure. So
specific, but you know.
sure, we're a non-bank offering a traditional bank product, right?
Got you.
So by national regulatory standards, the banks were immediately given approval to open. And we're saying, but our 30 something plus thousand customers, they want to transact too. And we need to make sure that this pool of
Right.
customers are kept functional within the ecosystem. Hi, we're over here.
Yeah,
We want
yeah,
to get
like
the same approval. So
Yeah.
yes.
you know, the whole idea why we do these sort of conversations really to inspire people and most importantly to let people know what the possibilities are out there for them. You know, for the young ladies and in tertiary, even university level, and females out there in the community who are listening to us talking about what you do, you know, seeing your achievements as a female in technology, they may have ideas too.
Yeah.
And again, you know, we talk about within the Caribbean, access to funding is always an issue across different spectrums. What are some of the practical pathways, Alison, that you think Caribbean women can pursue if they're looking to develop a tech-based industry to see exactly how they could get their business funded and even to scale?
So there are a couple of things that come to mind, and the first thing I would say is that men are a lot better at setting up equity structures, right?
Bringing up something. Hey.
We
Yeah, I just feel like if that's something, and so I maybe we have trust issues with each other, but that's another conversation for another podcast.
Yeah, you
But
know,
I
that's
I'm clipping that part. Men
yeah,
are better.
you know, that's
but no,
that we say
seriously,
sorry,
guys,
yeah.
men
Yeah.
tend to be better at saying, "Well, let's partner on this," right? And therefore, the weight of the business opportunity is not sitting on the financial shoulders or burden of one person. And with the right agreements and structures in place, they're models that can work. They're models that I have seen work successfully. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that I do think that for women led businesses, there needs to be more curiosity, more creativity, and more research brought to how they're looking for these opportunities. And I say that because there are organizations out there that are either creating funding opportunities or making grants available if the business idea is one that is worth exploring. So last week, interestingly enough, I was on another podcast with IDB, and I learned so much about an organization called Compute Caribbean, which I'd never known about. But I can guarantee you that if I were looking for funding, if I were looking for best practices,
Yeah.
these are things that I would be tapping into, because somebody out there has to be able to give me the resources that I need. So I do think that greater creativity, courage, even to ask a question. We have ideas and we want to hold them here, but holding them here doesn't get them to scale, right?
Yeah.
And then in terms of scaling, the important point to know is that you can't really scale successfully without capability and capacity, right? You could have all the capital in the world, but you need those things to be able to scale.
Capability, capacity, and capital. I like that. The
Yes.
three C's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Interesting.
when, but I mean, I like you, I've seen a lot of, and I think it's increased over the past 5 years, where there are very specific programs, grants, funds set up for women in tech, women entrepreneurs, which I think is fantastic. So the access to the capital is there. So, is there a challenge in the capability, in the capacity, or where do you think that if the access to capital is there, then what can we do different?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a there and again it may be just I'm playing on the seas for today, but sometimes it takes courage to step out, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as a lot of women-led businesses, unless you just taken the plunge, are being managed alongside of corporate roles or so
Right.
so if you are deeply invested in your idea that you can know and you can see the a vision for global scaling or even regional scaling, you're gonna have to go all in, and that requires courage. That's big and that's deep because many times women are heading households and having other responsibilities.
Yeah.
So, and I think if you take the plunge and then you are able to source the funding, then you could start to think about capability building because you need the talent, right? Even
Yeah.
within this business, I'm running a corporate entity, and finding good talent is a stretch.
Yeah.
Hard.
Yeah.
It's
You know,
hard.
it's hard. Even if
Yeah.
you find good technology people or good, whether whatever specific expertise you're looking for, then you have to marry that with the culture and the mindset and the attitudes of the people. So
Hmm.
it's easier said than done, but it first comes with having a really kind of taking the time to define the plan and then having the courage to start to say, this is it. There's no plan B and C. This is it, and I'm all in.
We're doing right.
Yes.
One of the things that I'm hearing coming out here throughout our entire conversation is that mindset shift is one of the critical components in terms of women in tech being able to advance, let's say, at equal pace to the men in technology. So mindset shift, you would say, definitely is a key component, Allison.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that for women especially, and even as I sit in the room within technology in meetings, right? We're in the middle of a very technical project. And one of the things I'm always noticing is the ability for women to feel as though they belong. If you
Yeah.
have a seat at the table, if you
Yeah.
have an opportunity in your hand, you need to make your voice heard. You need to speak up. You don't just have a space to take up space literally. You have to add add up and make sure that your contribution is a viable contribution, right? So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that sometimes that is also the mindset shift that is required. You first have to believe as though you have earned the right to be there and that you belong, and therefore while I'm there, my focus is about adding value and making a difference. How do I create
Excellent.
impact? I think that those are some of the things that I see women struggle with in terms of their mindset.
I have to tell you that in terms of from a Pace Digital perspective, having a look at your company, having a look especially at the senior management executive level, and I have to commend you that I realize that there are quite a number of women in senior roles at Pace Digital. So you're not just talking about it here, you're actually leading by example. So, folks could actually go and reference on like, hey, I see, you're there as CEO, you've got, your marketing people, different people like that. I don't remember the
Yes.
roles, but I said as I looked at the company, so
Yes, so
yeah,
not that I'm excluding the men, but
yeah,
it's one of the biggest challenges, and this is across the board, right? Even as at the tail end of International Women's Month, where we talk about the theme being give to gain, and I think one of the things that I've been very intentional about is pouring into mentorship, right?
yes,
Making
yeah,
sure that I create space and capacity within my leadership schedule to pour into others. And as I was thinking about this podcast, I said, what's one practical thing I would share? And I thought of the fact that in last week. I actually had a team member, a young emerging leader within the team. She's not at leadership level yet, but she has such strong potential. And I gave her an assignment that said, you're going to build the deck that we're going to be using for every single person that walks through this door that says, this is how you manage a credit card business. And,
Yeah.
and there are two reasons for that, right? One is to empower her to feel as though she has the ability to do something that's this important to her leader, but two, so that she can acquire the knowledge, because what that's going to do, send her to do research, because she knows the quality of what I'm expecting back. So she's going to do the research to get it to a point that every single Pace Digital employee will go through that orientation as soon as that pack is finished.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
John.
that's creating an enabling environment, which I think is
Precisely. Precisely.
absolutely critical. Having worked in tech myself over the past 20 to 25 years, I've had multiple women bosses who did the exact same thing. They were able to create an environment that allowed for learning, personal development, as well as driving bottom line and results,
Yes.
which
Yes.
in my experience was very different to my male bosses. My male bosses were very, very focused on driving bottom line results. That holistic approach to people development, because that's what it is at the end of the day. It's
Absolutely.
developing people. Why isn't that more prevalent in business culture today? After a hard one.
I wasn't sure which hat to wear
Where?
to answer that question, but I would say to you, from and I'll give you two different perspectives. I think from the male perspective, I think they're very men are very comfortable to speak from a place of authority, even when they don't have authority on the matter. No,
Fake it till you make it.
it comes down to a confidence thing, right? And then from the other perspective, and this is something that a lot of the work I do outside of my corporate role is to try to reverse, because I think that we have to reach a stage where women are more focused on collaboration to allow the world, and I'm just going to say it on a broad scale, to advance versus being in competition with each other. So it's collaboration over competition, leaving the door open for other women to have a seat at the table, and then for women to recognize that if their male counterparts are subject matter experts, even when they're not, that they need to speak with confidence.
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
Right?
yeah.
There's a degree of confidence that makes people listen to you. And that's something
Yes.
that we don't own.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is.
It's something that we have to groom into our young people.
Absolutely.
Looking at the statistics of graduates out of the university, I mean, it's predominantly women coming out of university now. Even though the numbers overall have dropped, the numbers going into university and graduating, I
Yes.
mean, it's a big disparity in the number between men and women. With more women going into professional services, and I'm particularly always interested in women in tech going into doing comp sci, doing those engineering degrees, computer science degrees,
Right.
and the reason is because the more women we have in those spaces, the more women are going to rise to leadership positions.
Yeah.
And not
Yes.
only just and within their own right, whether it be within a business, a corporate, or government, or wherever. And I think that idea of collaboration is critical for not just our country, but our region. If we're not collaborating on a regional level, and I think this is one of the reasons why our Prime Minister has been so successful, because she has been able to pull everybody together at the same time and ensure that everybody has a voice, everybody
Yes.
feels empowered to talk about the region in a positive way and change the narrative of our little islands, right? To on the global stage. How
Yes.
do we how do we bottle that? How do we bottle it?
I would like her to tell me too.
And, how do we
Um,
bottle it and just reproduce it at mass to all
Yeah,
of our young people.
yeah,
You
for
know
uptake.
what?
Yeah,
You know what? It has to start somewhere, right? And I think that's the reality. And that's why I'm so intentional in my leadership. I see myself, I always say that I'm a transformational leader, and one of my team members always corrects me and says I'm a visionary leader. And I don't know if there's a
I
difference between the two or not, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
take both of them for today's discussion, right? And
yeah,
the reason for that is that when I step into a space and I leave that space, it cannot just be that I've done this and it falls apart. There must be legacy coming behind. And I think that if we take that approach to say we're building not for the current, but we're building for the future, it means that at a national level, we're going to make better decisions because the generations coming behind are dependent on us. And at a company level, I'm saying that when I leave this business, it better be able to hold up, right? It better
yes,
be stronger than when I came. Because
yes,
otherwise, what was my legacy?
right, right, right,
And I
absolutely.
think that kind of thinking, actually there's a mindset shift and a behavioral shift that comes in your leadership when you lead with that thought process, right?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
And that is so critical, especially in our Caribbean context as emerging economies where we're looking to grow and build, and so many of the micro businesses, some of the enterprises in the region, they're doing the thing and they're doing it within their little framework, and when they go, then that business is no longer, and you're like, what happened?
Yeah,
And
correct.
Precisely,
there was no
precisely.
continuity. There
Yes.
was no plan for continuity.
That's very, very important. We can't build with the thought of where we are now. We have to build, and even when we're building in disruption through the use of technology, we have to build on trying with the vision in mind. And the vision is that this is something that lasts.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
One of the things that's coming to my mind, Alison, I'm very cognizant of time, is that you yourself, and being within the technological field specifically, how is it interacting with policymakers? What has that been like?
It's been interesting.
the
I probably am one of the most.
diplomatic, the diplomatic response.
Let me just put it this way, right? When we made the decision to pursue a principal membership license with Visa, that meant that I was building to make sure from that point we were building a business that was implementing best practices, right? It didn't matter if it didn't matter if we were being held to it or not. It just meant that that was the structure of continuous improvement model that I adopted under my leadership. And what that meant is that I was constantly knocking at the regulator's door to say,
Doors.
hey guys, we're over here. We deserve to have a voice. We deserve to be
Absolutely.
part of the policy discussions. We deserve to know what's happening and not read it in the newspaper. So I actually became very vocal in the market to say to my regulators that we need to be included. And I think one that's now landed me a role on the National Payment System Council, Payments Council, but because they recognize that there's a contribution to be made, right?
Yes.
So taking on the champion, acting as champion to make sure that not just the traditional banks were being considered, but if you're creating a landscape to broaden your ecosystem, then you have to consider your non-banks, you have to consider your fintechs, and therefore, when decisions are being made, when new policies are being drafted, then give us the courtesy of having a discussion. And I actually did play a very vocal role in making sure that we could be where we are today. And I think that
That's
I feel like if the mandate was executed, it was to make sure that we're included, and now the conversations are different, right?
right.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Always, riveting when you're having these kind of conversations. You look at the time and you're like, ah, yeah, she has to go. We can go on and we can talk, and
Yeah.
There's so much food for thought, so much knowledge been shared here today. I said I looked at the time and like, wow, we've been talking for 40 minutes already. You know what I mean? But I'm enjoying the conversation, Alison, and we recognize you're busy, so what we're going to do is show respect to that time that you afforded us
Sure.
today. And we're going to look to wrap our conversation. And John, maybe you'd want to come in with your final thoughts or maybe final question to Alison before we
Sure. I think for my final question to Alison, I mean, we spoke about the three C's, well, the four C's, because we're going to add courage to that because I think
Yes.
that's a critical component as
yeah.
well. 10 years' time, what does the landscape of women in tech look like for you?
Hmm. One of the things I would close by saying is that I think for the women that are in tech now, is understanding that you have a responsibility to keep that door open for other women, to ignite some curiosity by making sure that you're helping others to learn and to understand what tech women in tech looks like, right, and the responsibility that comes with that. So I see that as a pathway, one of the pathways that we need to be very intentional with. And then I also think that, again, through that curiosity, is really understanding whether there's an opportunity either at the regional level to have some kind of a pipeline that allows for either funding or matching opportunities to funding, right? I think that that is going to be critical because without, and then also kind of layering some other resources around that, business planning, being able to select vendor management and all these things that are core to making the business successful, so that the women in tech understand that they don't just have a responsibility to continue to build up, but they have a responsibility to make sure it can last as they build. So you're building to last, and
Building.
that would be what I would say. Just in terms of visibility, yes, visibility is important, inclusion is important, but if you're not building for impact and building to last, then I'm not really sure if you're being effective.
Food for thought. Alison, next time we invite you, we're going to ask for a longer time.
We need 2 hours. We need two
you
hours with
know,
Alison.
we are
I
going
don't think
to,
we can afford it.
hey, yeah, we'll try.
It was a pleasure,
But
guys. An absolute
honestly,
pleasure.
thank you so much. You've shared a trove of knowledge, of information, education, even with us today and with our audience today, and we really do appreciate it. As I said, we recognize that your schedule is pretty tight, but you still gave us the 45 minutes to come and chat with us. Conversations about regional development across different spectrums, they're always multi-dimensional. We could go into different facets as we continue this conversation. Hopefully you'll come back and talk to us about another element, maybe not about technology, but some of the field that you're involved in, that you could share more of your wide expertise with us. So I want to say
Sure.
that we value your time, and again, continue to do the wonderful work you guys are doing there at Pace. We really
Thank
think
you.
it's something that is important for the region, especially when we talk about the development of financial services, particularly in the area of fintech. So keep doing what you're doing, and congratulations on your growth so far.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure to be here.
It
Thank
was.
you,
Thank you.
Alison.
Good to have
Take
you here.
care.
Bye bye. All right. Bye bye.